Ladies and gentlemen, imagine stepping back in time 10,000 years ago. The world was changing, the last ice age was ending, and humanity stood at the crossroads of history. This was a time when human ingenuity and resilience laid the foundations for the civilizations we know today. The vast majority of humans lived as hunter-gatherers, a lifestyle that had sustained our species for tens of thousands of years. These early humans roamed the land in small groups, typically consisting of extended families or clans, moving from place to place in search of food, water, and shelter. Unlike today, there were no permanent settlements, no organized agriculture, and no domesticated livestock. Survival depended entirely on nature's resources and the ability to adapt to different environments. Men primarily took on the role of hunters, tracking and killing wild animals such as deer, bison, mammoths, and other game. Hunting was no easy task. It required patience, skill, and cooperation. Early humans developed advanced hunting techniques, using spears, bows and arrows, and traps to catch their prey. Some groups engaged in communal hunting, where they worked together to herd animals into narrow spaces or over cliffs, making them easier to kill. Every part of the animal was used: meat for food, bones for tools, hides for clothing and shelter. Nothing was wasted. Women and children played a crucial role as gatherers, foraging for edible plants, nuts, berries, roots, and seeds. This task required a deep understanding of the environment, as they needed to distinguish between safe and poisonous plants. Gathering was often more reliable than hunting, as plant-based food sources were more consistent than a successful hunt. In many ways, this knowledge of plants laid the foundation for the later shift to farming. Hunter-gatherer groups were highly mobile, moving with the seasons to follow migrating herds and find fresh water sources. They constructed temporary shelters using materials like wood, animal skins, and bones, often setting up camp near rivers, forests, or other resource-rich areas. Since they did not accumulate many possessions, their societies were generally more egalitarian, with resources being shared among all members. These early humans were deeply connected to nature, relying on their environment not just for food but also for tools, medicine, and clothing. They observed animal behaviors, weather patterns, and the cycles of the seasons, using this knowledge to make crucial survival decisions. Their ability to adapt to different climates and landscapes allowed them to spread across continents, from dense forests to open plains, icy tundras, and even deserts. Beyond mere survival, hunter-gatherers developed rich cultures, traditions, and belief systems. They created cave paintings, carved figurines, and left behind symbols that suggest early forms of storytelling, spiritual practices, and even social organization. Many groups believed in spirits that resided in animals, rivers, and the sky, and they likely performed rituals to honor these forces. While the hunter-gatherer way of life was eventually replaced by farming in many parts of the world, some small groups even today, like the San people of Africa or the indigenous tribes of the Amazon, still practice similar lifestyles. Their existence provides a glimpse into the resilience, intelligence, and adaptability that defined humanity for thousands of years. This era of human history may seem distant, but it laid the groundwork for everything that came after. It was a time of exploration, survival, and deep connection to the natural world, a way of life that shaped who we are as a species. 10,000 years ago, humanity stood at the threshold of one of the most profound transformations in history, the agricultural revolution. For thousands of years, humans had survived as hunter-gatherers, moving from place to place in search of food. But around this time, a gradual yet monumental shift began. People started to cultivate plants and domesticate animals, leading to a lifestyle based on farming rather than constant movement. This change did not happen overnight. It took centuries, even millennia, but it fundamentally altered human societies, shaping the world as we know it today. The agricultural revolution likely began due to a combination of environmental and social factors. As the last ice age ended, global temperatures rose, and many large animals that humans relied on for food either migrated to new regions or went extinct. In some areas, particularly in the Fertile Crescent, modern-day Middle East, people discovered that certain wild plants, like wheat and barley, could be deliberately grown and harvested. Rather than searching for food, they realized they could produce it themselves, reducing the need to constantly travel. Farming was not just about planting seeds. It required careful observation of the seasons, knowledge of soil conditions, and methods for protecting crops from pests and diseases. Early farmers had to experiment, selecting the best plants to replant for higher yields. Over time, they developed techniques such as irrigation, which allowed them to grow crops even in dry regions. This new way of life meant that, for the first time in history, humans had a stable and predictable food supply. The domestication of animals went hand in hand with agriculture. People began taming sheep, goats, pigs, and cattle, using them not only for meat but also for milk, wool, and labor. Oxen and donkeys became valuable for plowing fields and transporting goods. With these domesticated animals, farming became more efficient, allowing communities to grow larger than ever before. The ability to produce food in one place led to the establishment of permanent settlements. Small villages began to form, providing people with shelter and security. No longer needing to constantly migrate, families could invest time in building homes, creating storage facilities, and developing social structures. Over generations, these villages grew into towns and, eventually, into the great cities of the ancient world. Despite its advantages, agriculture also brought new challenges. Unlike hunting and gathering, which relied on nature's balance, farming made humans dependent on the land. Droughts, floods, or crop failures could lead to famine. Additionally, living in larger groups led to the spread of diseases, which had not been as much of an issue when people lived in small, mobile groups. Conflicts over land and resources became more common, as people competed for the most fertile areas. Nevertheless, the agricultural revolution was the foundation of civilization. It allowed populations to grow, societies to become more complex, and people to specialize in different tasks beyond food production. With a steady food supply, some individuals could focus on new skills: pottery, weaving, tool-making, and even governance. This specialization set the stage for trade, economic systems, and eventually, the rise of empires. This period marked the beginning of a new chapter in human history, one where humans took control of their environment rather than merely adapting to it. The choice to cultivate plants and domesticate animals was more than a survival strategy. It was a step toward the modern world. Around 10,000 years ago, a groundbreaking transformation was taking place. Humans were beginning to domesticate plants and animals. This shift from relying solely on wild resources to actively controlling food production was a key part of the agricultural revolution. It was not a sudden change, but rather a gradual process that took centuries of observation, experimentation, and adaptation. However, once it began, it altered human societies forever. Before domestication, people depended entirely on nature's abundance. They foraged for edible plants, nuts, and berries, never knowing exactly where their next meal would come from. Similarly, they hunted wild animals, which required skill, patience, and sometimes great danger. The unpredictability of this lifestyle meant that survival was never guaranteed. But over time, humans noticed patterns in nature. They saw that certain plants grew better in specific areas, and some animals were easier to tame than others. This knowledge laid the foundation for domestication. One of the earliest crops to be domesticated was wheat, along with barley, lentils, and peas. In the Fertile Crescent, an area that includes parts of modern-day Iraq, Syria, and Turkey, people began selectively planting seeds from the best crops, leading to higher yields. Over generations, these plants changed. They became easier to harvest, grew in predictable cycles, and produced more food. This process of artificial selection, where humans shaped plant species to suit their needs, was one of the earliest forms of genetic engineering. As farming spread to other regions, different crops were domesticated according to local conditions. In China, rice and millet became staple foods. In the Americas, early civilizations cultivated maize, corn, potatoes, and beans. Africa saw the domestication of sorghum and yams. Each region adapted its own agricultural practices, but the fundamental principle was the same. Humans had learned to control nature. Domestication was not limited to plants. Animals also became a crucial part of this new way of life. The first animals to be domesticated were likely dogs, which had already been living alongside humans as hunting companions and guards. But soon, people began taming other animals, starting with sheep, goats, and pigs. These animals were relatively easy to manage, provided a steady source of meat, and could reproduce under human supervision. As agriculture expanded, larger animals like cattle and horses were also domesticated. Cows provided milk, leather, and labor for plowing fields, while horses and donkeys revolutionized transportation and warfare. In some parts of the world, camels became essential for long-distance trade across deserts. The domestication of these animals gave humans more control over their environment and allowed for larger, more stable communities. One of the most significant advantages of domestication was food security. Unlike hunting, which could be unpredictable, farming and animal husbandry provided a consistent food supply. This stability allowed human populations to grow, leading to the formation of permanent settlements. With reliable sources of food, people had the freedom to focus on other tasks beyond mere survival. However, domestication also brought challenges. Relying on a limited number of crops made societies vulnerable to disease and famine if a harvest failed. Living in close quarters with domesticated animals exposed humans to new illnesses, some of which would later become widespread epidemics. The transition from foraging to farming also meant harder, more labor-intensive work, as people had to tend to crops and livestock year-round. Despite these challenges, the domestication of plants and animals was one of the most important milestones in human history. It laid the foundation for the rise of villages, cities, and eventually civilizations. By learning to control and manipulate the natural world, humans set themselves on a path toward greater innovation, economic development, and social complexity. The ability to produce food rather than simply find it was a defining moment that shaped the course of history. Humanity was undergoing one of the most significant transformations in history, the shift from a nomadic lifestyle to settled communities. As people began to domesticate plants and animals, they no longer needed to constantly move in search of food. This change allowed them to establish the world's first villages, small but permanent settlements that became the foundation for larger cities and civilizations in the centuries to come. For thousands of years, humans had lived in temporary shelters, following migrating animals and the seasonal growth of plants. Their survival depended on moving from one place to another, never staying in one location for too long. However, as they began farming, a new possibility emerged: the ability to stay in one place year-round. Growing crops meant that people needed to tend to their fields daily, ensuring that plants were watered, protected from pests, and harvested at the right time. This necessity led to the first permanent villages. One of the oldest known villages is Jericho, located in present-day Palestine. Archaeological evidence suggests that Jericho was inhabited as early as 9000 BC. Unlike earlier temporary camps, Jericho had permanent stone houses, defensive walls, and even a tower that might have been used for protection or religious purposes. The presence of these structures suggests that people were not only living in one place, but also organizing themselves into a community with shared responsibilities. Another famous early village is Çatalhöyük, located in modern-day Turkey. This settlement, which dates back to around 7500 BCE, was home to thousands of people, an astonishing number for that time. The houses in Çatalhöyük were built close together, with entrances on the roofs rather than doors on the ground. This design may have been for protection, allowing people to move safely above ground level and avoid potential threats from wild animals or rival groups. Inside the homes, archaeologists have found murals and figurines, suggesting that the people of Çatalhöyük had cultural and religious traditions that were important to their society. These early villages were more than just places to live, they represented a new way of life. People now had a stable food supply, which meant they could store surplus grain and other crops. This allowed for food security, reducing the constant stress of searching for the next meal. With reliable food sources, populations began to grow. Villages also created a sense of community, where people worked together to build homes, protect their land, and share resources. As villages grew, social structures began to change. Unlike small hunter-gatherer groups, where everyone had similar roles, settled communities started to develop specialization of labor. Some people focused on farming, while others became skilled in pottery, weaving, or toolmaking. This specialization led to advancements in technology, trade, and craftsmanship, marking the beginning of economic and cultural development. Trade between villages also became more common. People exchanged surplus food, tools, and other goods, creating networks that connected different regions. These early trade routes helped spread ideas, technologies, and even religious beliefs between communities. Of course, the shift to permanent settlements was not without challenges. Living in one place made people more vulnerable to natural disasters, such as floods and droughts. It also increased the risk of conflict, as groups competed for the best land and resources. Additionally, living in close quarters led to the spread of diseases, which had not been as much of an issue when people lived in small, mobile groups. Despite these difficulties, the first villages marked a turning point in human history. They were the stepping stones toward the development of cities, governments, and complex societies. The decision to settle down and build permanent homes was more than just a change in lifestyle. It was the beginning of civilization itself. 10,000 years ago, humanity was standing on the edge of a new era. As people transitioned from a nomadic lifestyle to settled villages, they needed new tools to help them farm, store food, and build homes. This period saw major advancements in stone toolmaking and pottery, both of which played a crucial role in shaping early human societies. These innovations not only made daily life easier, but also laid the groundwork for further technological progress in the centuries to come. The evolution of stone tools. For thousands of years, humans had relied on simple stone tools for hunting, cutting, and shaping materials. These tools, made from flint, obsidian, and other hard stones, were carefully chipped to create sharp edges. However, with the rise of agriculture and permanent settlements, people needed more specialized tools for farming and construction. This led to the development of polished stone tools, which were more durable and efficient than their earlier counterparts. One of the most important innovations of this time was the stone axe. Unlike earlier hunting weapons, the stone axe was designed for cutting trees and clearing land for farming. This tool allowed people to build homes, create wooden structures, and prepare land for planting crops. The polished surface of these axes made them stronger and longer-lasting, reducing the effort needed for chopping and cutting. Another significant development was the grinding stone. Before the domestication of plants, people ate wild grains in their raw form. But with farming, they needed a way to process harvested crops. Grinding stones were used to crush grains into flour, allowing people to make bread and porridge. This simple yet crucial invention changed the way humans consumed food and ensured they could store and prepare meals more efficiently. Stone tools also became more refined for hunting and food preparation. Arrowheads and spear tips became sharper and more precise, improving hunting success rates. Additionally, stone knives and scrapers were developed to cut meat, prepare animal hides for clothing, and craft other essential items. The rise of pottery, a revolutionary invention. As people settled in villages, they faced a new challenge: food storage. Unlike hunter-gatherers, who consumed food as they found it, farmers needed to store grains, seeds, and water for future use. This led to one of the most groundbreaking inventions of the Neolithic era: pottery. The earliest pottery was made by shaping wet clay into containers and drying them in the sun. Over time, people discovered that firing clay in a kiln or an open fire made it stronger and more durable. This technique allowed them to create sturdy pots, bowls, and storage jars that could hold food, water, and even cooking ingredients. Pottery was not just functional, it also became an art form. Early humans decorated their pots with intricate designs, patterns, and symbols, often using natural pigments to add color. These designs were more than just decoration. They may have had religious, cultural, or symbolic meanings, reflecting the beliefs and traditions of the people who made them. In addition to storage, pottery revolutionized cooking. Before the invention of clay pots, People primarily roasted food over open flames or used hot stones to cook. But with the introduction of pottery, they could boil water, make soups, and cook grains more efficiently. This advancement led to the creation of more diverse and nutritious diets, improving overall health and survival rates. Pottery also played a key role in trade and social interaction. As villages grew, people began exchanging goods with neighboring communities. High-quality pottery became a valuable commodity, traded alongside food, tools, and other resources. Some regions developed unique pottery styles, allowing archaeologists today to trace early trade networks and cultural exchanges between ancient societies. The lasting impact of these innovations. The development of stone tools and pottery marked a turning point in human history. These advancements allowed people to farm more effectively, store food for long periods, and cook meals in new ways. They also led to the specialization of labor, as some individuals became skilled potters and toolmakers, contributing to the economic and social complexity of early villages. While simple in appearance, these technologies laid the foundation for later innovations in metalworking, architecture, and trade. Without the ability to craft durable tools and store food efficiently, human civilization would not have advanced as rapidly as it did. These early inventions may seem basic compared to today's technology, but in their time, they were nothing short of revolutionary. 10,000 years ago, as humans transitioned from a nomadic lifestyle to settled communities, the need for clothing became even more important. Early humans had already been using animal hides and plant materials for warmth and protection, but as societies grew and climates varied, clothing evolved into something more than just a necessity. It became a symbol of identity, craftsmanship, and adaptation to different environments. The earliest forms of clothing. Before humans learned to weave fabrics, they relied on materials found in nature to cover and protect their bodies. Animal hides and furs were among the first types of clothing, providing essential warmth in colder climates. In regions with harsh winters, people developed methods to tan and soften animal skins, making them more comfortable and durable. These early garments were often tied together with leather straps or sinew, animal tendons, and fashioned into simple robes, cloaks, and leggings. In warmer regions, where heavy furs were impractical, people used woven plant fibers, grasses, and bark to create lightweight coverings. Early evidence suggests that some groups even crafted simple sandals to protect their feet from rough terrain. These early garments were not just about protection, they also allowed humans to move more efficiently through different landscapes. The birth of weaving and fabric making. As settlements grew and agriculture became more advanced, people began experimenting with textile production. The domestication of sheep, goats, and other animals provided an important new resource: wool. Instead of relying solely on animal hides, humans started spinning wool into thread and weaving it into fabric. This was a revolutionary development because woven textiles were lighter, more flexible, and could be shaped into different types of garments. In some regions, people discovered flax, a plant that could be processed into linen. Flax fibers were soaked, beaten, and spun into thread, which was then woven into fabric. Linen became one of the earliest known textiles, widely used in ancient societies for its breathability and durability. Over time, people also began using cotton, which was cultivated in South Asia and parts of Africa. These materials allowed for a greater variety of clothing styles and improved comfort. The process of weaving required specialized tools, leading to the development of spindles and looms. Early looms allowed people to produce larger and more complex fabrics, which could be cut and sewn into fitted garments rather than simple drapes or wraps. This shift marked a turning point in clothing production, as people could now create different outfits suited for different purposes: work, rituals, and even social status. Clothing as a symbol of identity and culture. While clothing was primarily used for protection, it soon became a reflection of culture and identity. In early societies, the way people dressed often indicated their social status, tribe, or occupation. Some groups dyed their fabrics using natural pigments from plants, minerals, and insects, creating colorful patterns and symbolic designs. Others adorned their clothing with beads, shells, or feathers, signifying achievements, religious beliefs, or group affiliations. In some cultures, clothing also played a role in rituals and ceremonies. Animal skins and elaborate headpieces were worn by shamans and spiritual leaders, symbolizing their connection to the natural world. Warriors often decorated their garments with bones, feathers, or paint to intimidate enemies and showcase their bravery. Even in early villages, distinctions in clothing began to emerge between everyday wear and ceremonial attire. The impact of clothing on early societies. The advancement of clothing had profound effects on human civilization. It allowed people to adapt to different environments, enabling them to expand into colder, harsher climates. It also contributed to trade and economic growth, as textiles became valuable goods exchanged between early societies. Regions with specialized fabric-making techniques began to trade their textiles for food, tools, and other resources, fostering connections between distant communities. Additionally, the development of clothing encouraged technological innovation. The creation of needles, spindles, looms, and dyeing techniques led to further advancements in craftsmanship. Over time, clothing became more than just a necessity. It became an art form, a social statement, and a defining feature of human civilization. 10,000 years ago, human societies were undergoing a major transformation. The shift from small, mobile groups of hunter-gatherers to larger, settled agricultural communities led to the development of social structures, systems that organized how people lived, worked, and interacted with one another. These early forms of leadership, division of labor, and community cooperation laid the foundation for the complex civilizations that would emerge in the centuries to come. The shift from egalitarian groups to hierarchical societies. For most of human history, hunter-gatherer societies had been relatively egalitarian, meaning that people shared responsibilities and decision-making was more collective. Leadership, when it existed, was based on experience and skill rather than inherited power. The strongest hunters, the most knowledgeable gatherers, or the wisest elders often guided their groups, but they did not rule over others in the way later kings and rulers would. However, with the establishment of permanent settlements, things began to change. As villages grew and farming became the primary way of life, societies needed a more structured way to manage land, food, and resources. Some individuals or families gained more influence, often because they controlled fertile farmland, stored surplus grain, or played a key role in organizing community projects. This led to the emergence of social hierarchies, where some people had more power and privilege than others. The emergence of leadership and early governance. With growing populations and increasing complexity in daily life, early villages required leadership and organization. Someone had to decide when to plant and harvest crops, how to distribute food, and how to resolve disputes between community members. This led to the rise of chiefs, elders, and councils, who took on the responsibility of making important decisions. In some cases, leadership was based on wisdom and experience. Elders, people who had lived the longest and gained the most knowledge, were often respected and trusted to guide the community. They passed down traditions, settled conflicts, and made decisions that affected the entire village. In other cases, leadership was based on strength or military ability, with warriors or hunters becoming community protectors and leaders. Religious figures also began to hold significant power. As spiritual beliefs developed, shamans and priests became influential members of society, acting as intermediaries between the people and the gods or spirits they worshipped. These early religious leaders performed rituals, interpreted natural events, and advised the community on important matters. The division of labor, specialization, and economic growth. One of the biggest social changes during this period was the division of labor, the process by which people began to specialize in different types of work instead of all performing the same tasks. In small hunter-gatherer groups, everyone contributed to food collection in some way, but in settled villages, new roles emerged. Farmers focused on growing crops and raising livestock, ensuring the community had a steady food supply. Builders and craftsmen created homes, pottery, tools, and weapons. Traders exchanged goods with neighboring villages, helping spread ideas and resources. Religious figures conducted ceremonies and rituals, playing a key role in cultural development. Leaders and warriors protected the village and made important decisions. This specialization allowed societies to become more efficient and prosperous. Instead of each person having to do everything for survival, people could focus on mastering a particular skill, leading to technological and cultural advancements. Social classes and inequality. While specialization improved efficiency, it also created social inequality. Some jobs were seen as more important than others, and those who controlled resources, such as landowners, religious leaders, or chiefs, began to have more power than those who worked the land or made tools. Over time, this led to the formation of social classes, where certain individuals or families held higher status and wealth than others. For example, those who owned large farms or had access to stored food could demand labor or tribute from others. In some societies, warriors and hunters were given special privileges because they protected the community. Religious leaders often claimed they had direct connections to the gods, reinforcing their position of authority. As social structures became more rigid, people were often born into their roles, meaning a child of a farmer would likely become a farmer, while the child of a chief or religious leader would inherit a position of power. This marked the beginning of the class-based societies that would later define ancient civilizations. The role of family and kinship. Despite these growing hierarchies, family and kinship remained central to early social structures. People lived in extended families where multiple generations, grandparents, parents, children, and relatives shared homes and worked together. These family units provided security, helped pass down traditions, and ensured that knowledge and skills were preserved across generations. In many early societies, clans and tribes formed based on family ties. These larger social groups provided mutual support, protection, and a sense of belonging. Clans often had leaders who represented them in decision-making councils, ensuring that the interests of their members were heard. Marriage and alliances between different families or clans also played a role in maintaining peace and cooperation. In some cases, marriages were arranged to strengthen ties between powerful families or to resolve conflicts between groups. The lasting impact of early social structures. The development of social structures 10,000 years ago laid the groundwork for organized societies, governance, and economies. The emergence of leadership, division of labor, and social classes would continue to evolve, leading to the creation of cities, kingdoms, and empires. While early societies were simpler compared to later civilizations, they introduced concepts that are still present today: hierarchies, governance, trade, and social roles. These early forms of organization allowed human communities to cooperate, grow, and innovate, shaping the course of history for generations to come. Religion and spirituality were deeply woven into the fabric of early human societies. As people settled into villages and began farming, they became more connected to the land, the changing seasons, and the forces of nature. Unlike their hunter-gatherer ancestors, who moved frequently and relied on direct encounters with the natural world, these early farmers experienced cycles of growth, harvest, and renewal, which influenced their beliefs about gods, spirits, and the afterlife. Religion played a crucial role in helping early humans understand the unknown. The world was full of mysteries: thunderstorms, droughts, illnesses, and even death. Without scientific explanations, people turned to spiritual beliefs to make sense of these events. They believed that natural forces were controlled by gods or spirits, and that these deities needed to be respected, worshipped, or appeased to ensure the community's survival. Nature worship and the first gods. Since early societies depended on nature for food and survival, many of their religious beliefs centered around nature worship. They saw the sun, moon, rivers, mountains, and animals as powerful forces that influenced their lives. These elements were often personified as gods or spirits who had the ability to bring prosperity or destruction. For example, the sun was often worshipped as a giver of life, since it allowed crops to grow. The moon and stars were associated with timekeeping, guiding farmers on when to plant and harvest. Rivers and rain were seen as sacred sources of fertility and abundance, essential for growing food. Animals were believed to have spiritual significance, and some were considered messengers of the gods. Many early societies had animal totems, believing that certain animals held special powers or represented the spirit of their tribe. Shamans. the spiritual leaders of early communities, often wore animal skins or masks during rituals to connect with these sacred creatures. Rituals, offerings, and ceremonies. Religious practices in early villages were centered around rituals and offerings, which were performed to seek protection, ensure good harvests, or ask for rain. These rituals often involved sacrifices. Early humans believed that offering food, animals, or even human lives to the gods would bring blessings in return. Sacrifices were made to ensure a successful hunting season, a bountiful harvest, or victory in battle. Dance and music. Many rituals included dance, chanting, and drumming, which were believed to communicate with the spirit world. Burial customs. Early humans buried their dead with tools, food, and valuable objects, suggesting a belief in the afterlife. Some graves also contained red ochre, possibly symbolizing blood and rebirth. Certain locations, such as mountains, caves, and large stones, were considered sacred and used for religious ceremonies. Over time, people began constructing shrines and temples to honor their gods, marking the beginning of organized religious centers. The role of shamans and priests. In early societies, spiritual leaders known as shamans, priests, or medicine men and women played an important role in guiding religious practices. Shamans were believed to have the ability to communicate with spirits, heal the sick, and predict future events. They used herbs, trance-like states, and rituals to interact with the supernatural world. As societies became more structured, religious roles became more formalized, leading to the rise of priests and temples. Certain individuals were given the responsibility of maintaining sacred sites, performing daily rituals, and interpreting the will of the gods. This shift marked the beginning of organized religion, where spiritual practices were overseen by a specific class of people rather than by individual families or shamans alone. The afterlife and belief in spirits. One of the most fascinating aspects of early religion was the belief in the afterlife. Many ancient burial sites suggest that early humans believed death was not the end, but rather a transition to another world. This belief led to elaborate burials, where the dead were given tools, jewelry, and food for their journey in the afterlife. Ancestor worship, where people honored their deceased relatives, believing they could provide guidance or protection from beyond. Ghost stories and spirit beliefs, where people thought spirits of the dead could influence the living, either as benevolent protectors or as vengeful entities. These beliefs laid the foundation for the religious ideas that would later evolve into mythologies, sacred texts, and organized faiths. The role of religion in early society. Religion did more than just explain natural events. It shaped social and political structures. In many early communities, religious leaders held as much power as chiefs or warriors. People followed their guidance on everything from farming cycles to conflict resolution. Over time, rulers claimed they were chosen by the gods, using religion to justify their authority. Additionally, religious festivals and rituals strengthened community bonds. Shared ceremonies gave people a sense of belonging and unity, reinforcing social order and cultural identity. Even today, many of the traditions and customs practiced in early societies have echoes in modern religions. As human societies became more complex, the need for effective language and communication became more crucial than ever. Early humans had already developed forms of spoken language, but as they transitioned from small, mobile hunter-gatherer groups to larger, settled agricultural communities, their methods of communication needed to evolve. The rise of farming, trade, social structures, and religious practices required more precise ways to share knowledge, coordinate activities, and express ideas. This period marked a significant step in the development of language, storytelling, symbolic communication, and the first forms of writing. The spoken word, how language evolved. Language is one of the most defining characteristics of humanity. While early humans had been communicating for thousands of years using a combination of gestures, sounds, and simple words, the growing complexity of society meant that spoken language had to develop further. From simple sounds to structured speech, early human communication likely began with basic sounds and gestures, similar to how some animals communicate today. Over time, These sounds evolved into structured speech patterns, allowing people to describe their surroundings, warn others of danger, and share important information. Naming the world. As humans settled into villages and began farming, they needed words to describe their crops, animals, tools, seasons, and land. New words were created to differentiate between plants that were edible and those that were poisonous, between tools for farming and tools for hunting. This expansion of vocabulary helped societies function more efficiently. Cooperation and organization. The development of spoken language allowed humans to organize tasks better. Farming required coordinating labor, religious ceremonies involved reciting prayers and myths, and trade needed a system to discuss values and agreements. Without advanced speech, managing a growing society would have been nearly impossible. By this time, different groups of people had already developed their own distinct languages and dialects, shaped by their environment, culture, and experiences. While we may never know exactly how these early languages sounded, linguistic evidence suggests that many modern language families can trace their origins back to this time. The power of storytelling, passing down knowledge and culture. Long before the invention of writing, humans preserved their knowledge, history, and traditions through oral storytelling. Stories were more than just entertainment. They were a means of education, teaching future generations about survival, morality, and the mysteries of the world. Myths and legends. Every ancient society had myths explaining how the world was created, why the seasons changed, or how their ancestors came to be. These stories helped early humans make sense of the unknown. Folktales and moral lessons. Storytelling was also a way to teach lessons about bravery, loyalty, kindness, and wisdom. Through tales of heroes, tricksters, and gods, people passed down ethical values and cultural traditions. History and lineage. Without written records, storytelling was the only way to preserve genealogy and important historical events. Elders and tribal leaders were responsible for remembering and passing down the history of their people. Storytelling strengthened social bonds, created a shared sense of identity, and helped communities maintain their traditions over generations. Even today, many ancient myths and folktales still influence modern literature, religion, and cultural beliefs. Symbolic communication, the first steps toward writing. As societies grew, verbal communication was no longer enough to meet all their needs. Humans began using symbols and early forms of writing to record important information. Cave paintings and petroglyphs. Long before written words, humans used art as a form of communication. Cave paintings from thousands of years earlier depicted hunting scenes, animals, and human figures, possibly to tell stories or share information about successful hunts. Carvings and symbols. In some cultures, people began carving symbols onto stones, bones, and clay tablets. These markings may have represented numbers, trade records, or religious symbols, laying the groundwork for future writing systems. Proto-writing. Some of the earliest known forms of proto-writing, symbols that later developed into writing systems, included tally marks, pictographs, simple drawings representing objects, and early accounting systems used in trade. Though these were not full writing systems yet, they represented a major shift in how humans stored and shared information. Over time, these symbols would evolve into the first true writing systems, such as cuneiform in Mesopotamia and hieroglyphics in Egypt. Language, trade, and diplomacy. The expansion of trade and interaction between different groups of people increased the need for communication across cultures. Merchants, travelers, and leaders had to find ways to understand one another to exchange goods, settle disputes, and form alliances. Trade languages. In some regions, common trade languages or simple sign languages developed to help people from different linguistic backgrounds communicate. Interpreters and messengers. Some individuals became skilled in learning multiple languages, acting as translators and messengers between groups. Standardizing measurements and agreements. As trade networks expanded, societies needed consistent ways to measure goods and record agreements, leading to early forms of contracts and standard measurement systems. This ability to communicate across different communities helped spread new ideas, technologies, and cultural practices, shaping human civilization in profound ways. The lasting impact of early language development. The evolution of language and communication transformed human society. It allowed for better cooperation and organization within growing villages, the preservation of knowledge through storytelling and oral traditions, the recording of important events and trade using symbols and proto-writing, cultural exchange and innovation through trade and diplomacy. These advancements laid the foundation for the complex languages, literature, and writing systems that would later define great civilizations. Even in today's modern world, language remains at the heart of human interaction, just as it was 10,000 years ago. Humans were in the midst of a technological revolution. While they had been using tools for thousands of years, this period saw a significant advancement in tool-making techniques and materials. As people transitioned from nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyles to settled agricultural societies, their needs changed, and so did the tools they created. These innovations helped shape the course of human history, leading to the development of agriculture, construction, transportation, and even early forms of industry. The legacy of the Stone Age, refining tools for a changing world. Before the Neolithic period, roughly 10,000 years ago, humans relied primarily on simple stone tools for hunting, cutting, and processing food. However, as societies evolved, they required more specialized and efficient tools for farming, building, and crafting. This period marked the shift from the Paleolithic, Old Stone Age, to the Neolithic, New Stone Age, where humans began to refine and polish their tools rather than just shaping rough stones. Some key innovations included ground and polished stone tools. Unlike the earlier chip stone tools, Neolithic tools were ground and polished to create sharper and more durable edges. This allowed for better efficiency in farming, hunting, and construction. Specialized farming tools. With the rise of agriculture, early farmers needed tools like sickles for harvesting grain, grinding stones for processing food, and wooden plows for tilling soil. These tools increased food production and supported growing populations. Bone and antler tools. In addition to stone, humans crafted tools from bone, antler, and wood, which were used for sewing, fishing, and fine crafting. These materials were more flexible and sometimes easier to shape than stone. The refinement of tools allowed humans to work more efficiently, opening the door for more complex societies and economic activities. The invention of pottery, storing food for the future. One of the most groundbreaking technological developments of this period was pottery. Before its invention, humans relied on baskets, animal hides, or gourds to store food and water. However, these materials were not always durable or suited for long-term storage. Pottery changed everything by offering a more durable and heat-resistant solution. Early humans discovered that clay could be shaped, dried, and fired to create hard containers, which led to several key advantages. Food storage. People could now store surplus grains, dried meats, and liquids for longer periods, helping them survive during harsh seasons. Cooking advancements. Pottery allowed humans to boil food, making it easier to digest and unlocking new ways to prepare meals. Trade and commerce. As pottery became more advanced, certain regions developed distinct styles and designs, which were traded between communities, fostering cultural exchange. Pottery was not just practical, it also became an artistic expression, with early humans decorating their pots with intricate patterns, symbols, and carvings that reflected their beliefs and traditions. Construction and early architecture, building permanent homes. With the shift to farming, humans needed permanent shelters rather than temporary huts used by hunter-gatherers. This period saw the rise of early architecture, as people developed better methods to build houses, storage facilities, and even communal meeting spaces. Mud brick houses. Many Neolithic communities started using mud bricks, made from clay and straw, to construct more durable homes. These houses provided better protection from weather and predators compared to wooden or stone shelters. Circular and rectangular homes. Early homes were often round or rectangular, designed to accommodate multiple family members and store food supplies. Defensive structures. As settlements grew, people built walls and trenches to protect their villages from animals and rival groups, marking the beginning of fortified settlements. The development of more advanced construction techniques laid the foundation for the first cities and civilizations in the centuries to come. Textile production, the first clothing and fabrics. While animal hides and furs had been used for clothing for thousands of years, Neolithic humans began developing textiles, weaving plant fibers and animal wool to make cloth. This technological breakthrough had several benefits. More comfortable and adaptable clothing. Fabric-based clothing was lighter and easier to wear than thick animal hides, making it more practical for different climates. Specialized weaving tools. Early humans invented spindles and looms to weave fibers more efficiently, leading to the production of woven garments, bags, and blankets. Trade and innovation. Textiles became a valuable trade commodity as different regions developed unique weaving styles and dyeing techniques. The ability to produce woven clothing and textiles represented another step toward advanced civilization, with specialized craftsmanship and industry beginning to emerge. Advancements in hunting, fishing, and transportation. Even though farming was becoming the primary source of food, hunting and fishing still played a significant role in survival. To improve their efficiency, humans developed new technologies. Bow and arrow. While early versions of bows had existed before, Neolithic humans refined the design, making hunting more effective and precise. Fishing nets and hooks. Instead of relying only on spears, people created woven fishing nets and bone hooks, increasing their ability to catch fish. Boats and canoes. The first dugout canoes, made by hollowing out logs, allowed people to travel across rivers and lakes, expanding trade and exploration. These technological innovations allowed humans to expand their food sources, explore new environments, and establish trade routes with distant communities. The first metal tools. The transition from stone to metal. By the end of the Neolithic period, some societies began experimenting with metalworking, marking the transition toward the Bronze Age. The discovery of copper and its use in tools and weapons was a significant step forward. Stronger and more durable tools. Copper tools lasted longer and were more effective for farming, construction, and warfare than stone tools. Metalworking techniques. Early smiths learned how to melt, shape, and refine metal, paving the way for future technological advancements. Trade expansion. Metal tools and ornaments became valuable trade items, encouraging more interaction between different cultures. Though stone tools were still widely used, the knowledge of metalworking set the stage for the next great leap in human technology. The lasting impact of early technological advancements. The technological innovations of 10,000 years ago laid the foundation for human civilization as we know it. The refinement of tools, the invention of pottery, the development of agriculture-related equipment, and the beginnings of architecture and textile production all transformed how humans lived and worked. These advancements allowed societies to become more efficient, productive, and interconnected, setting the stage for the great civilizations that would soon rise. As humans transitioned from small, nomadic groups to larger, settled communities, they began to engage in trade and exchange. In the past, hunter-gatherers shared food and tools within their groups, but with the development of agriculture, pottery, and specialized craftsmanship, people now had surpluses of goods that could be exchanged with others. This shift laid the foundation for the first economic systems, allowing early societies to access resources they lacked, establish relationships with distant groups, and expand their cultural knowledge. Trade was not just about goods. It was also about ideas, technology, and cultural exchange. The movement of people and products across different regions helped spread innovations, leading to faster advancements in technology, farming techniques, and craftsmanship. Why did early humans begin trading? Several key factors encouraged early humans to engage in trade. Resource scarcity. Not all regions had the same resources. Some areas had an abundance of stone, wood, or fertile soil, while others had access to precious minerals, salt, or exotic plants. Trade allowed communities to acquire materials they could not produce locally. Surplus production. With the development of farming, communities often produced more food than they needed. Instead of letting surplus crops go to waste, people exchanged them for other valuable items like tools, clothing, or decorative objects. Specialization of labor. As villages grew, some people became specialized craftsmen, making tools, pottery, or textiles. These artisans needed food and raw materials, which they obtained through trade. Expanding social networks. Trade also helped communities form alliances, creating relationships with neighboring groups that could be beneficial in times of need, such as during droughts or conflicts. The rise of trade led to economic interdependence, where different groups began relying on each other for survival and prosperity. What did early humans trade? While trade was still in its early stages, many goods were already being exchanged between different groups. Food and agricultural products, grains, dried meat, nuts, fruits, and other food items were commonly traded, especially between farming and non-farming societies. Tools and weapons, stone blades, axes, and arrowheads were highly valuable, especially if they were made from rare or high-quality stone like obsidian or flint. Pottery and containers. Pottery was essential for storing and transporting food and liquids, making it one of the most commonly traded goods. Clothing and textiles. Early humans wove cloth from plant fibers and animal wool, which could be traded for food, tools, or decorative items. Precious materials. Beads, shells, animal bones, and colorful stones were often exchanged for their decorative or symbolic value, used in jewelry and rituals. Salt. Salt was incredibly valuable because it was essential for preserving food and maintaining health. Some communities specialized in harvesting and trading salt. How did early humans trade? Before the invention of money, early trade was based on a barter system, where goods were directly exchanged for other goods of equal value. A farmer might trade a bag of wheat for a stone axe, or a potter might exchange pottery for animal hides. However, as trade expanded, humans developed early forms of currency to make transactions smoother. These included shells and beads. In some regions, shells or carved beads were used as a symbol of wealth and trade value. Metal objects. Some of the earliest metal tools and ornaments functioned as primitive forms of currency. Standardized trade goods. Certain items, like salt or obsidian, became widely accepted as trade standards because they were valuable and in high demand. As trade routes grew, humans developed more organized trading practices, such as setting up markets or meeting points where people from different regions could gather and exchange goods. The first trade routes, expanding beyond local villages. Over time, trade networks extended beyond local villages, connecting different regions and cultures. Some of the earliest trade routes included obsidian trade routes. Obsidian, a sharp volcanic glass used for tools and weapons, was one of the most valuable trade goods. Some of the first long-distance trade routes involved the exchange of obsidian between mountain regions and lowland farming communities. Rivers as trade highways. Many early trade routes followed rivers, which made it easier to transport goods by boat rather than carrying them overland. Seasonal trading gatherings. Some groups would travel long distances to attend seasonal markets, where they could trade surplus goods before returning home. As trade expanded, people encountered new ideas, technologies, and customs, leading to cultural exchanges that influenced everything from agriculture to religious beliefs. The social and cultural impact of trade. Trade was more than just an economic activity. It helped shape early human society in several ways. The rise of social hierarchies. As trade became more important, certain individuals or families gained wealth and power, leading to the development of social classes. Those who controlled trade routes or valuable goods often became leaders or influential figures in their communities. The spread of knowledge, along with goods, trade spread ideas, farming techniques, and craftsmanship. This knowledge exchange accelerated technological progress across different societies. Stronger alliances and diplomacy. Trade fostered cooperation between different communities, reducing conflicts and creating long-lasting trade partnerships. Cultural blending. As people from different regions interacted, they adopted new traditions, artistic styles, and religious beliefs, leading to the first instances of cultural fusion. This period of increased trade and exchange was a turning point in human history, laying the foundation for the vast trade networks that would later connect entire civilizations. As human societies transitioned from nomadic hunting and gathering to settled agricultural communities, their spiritual beliefs and religious practices evolved as well. Early humans had long believed in spirits, nature gods, and the forces of the unknown, but with the rise of permanent villages, farming, and social organization, religion became more structured and deeply integrated into daily life. Religion during this time was not just about worship. It was a way of understanding the world, explaining natural events, and uniting communities through shared beliefs and rituals. From sacred burial sites to early temples, from shamanistic traditions to agricultural deities, religion played a crucial role in shaping human civilization. Why did early humans develop religious beliefs? Religious beliefs emerged as a way to make sense of the mysteries of life and the forces of nature. Several key factors contributed to the development of early religion. Explaining natural phenomena, early humans did not have scientific knowledge to understand weather, disease, birth, death, and celestial events. They believed that powerful spirits or gods controlled these forces. For example, a storm might be seen as a sign of divine anger, while a good harvest could be a blessing from the gods. Fear of death and the afterlife. The mystery of death led people to believe in an afterlife or spiritual existence beyond death. Many ancient burial sites suggest that early humans performed rituals and placed objects with the deceased, possibly for use in the next world. The need for protection and guidance. As people faced dangers from predators, diseases, and natural disasters, they sought spiritual protection from gods, spirits, or ancestors who could help them in times of trouble. Strengthening social bonds. Religion brought communities together by creating shared beliefs, moral values, and traditions. It gave people a common purpose and reinforced social cooperation. The role of shamans and spiritual leaders. In many early societies, shamans, priests, or spiritual leaders played a central role in religious practices. These individuals were believed to have a special connection with the spirit world and served as healers, guides, and interpreters of divine messages. Shamanism. Many ancient cultures practiced shamanism, where a chosen individual, shaman, communicated with spirits through trance-like states, rituals, or the use of natural hallucinogens. Shamans were responsible for healing the sick, predicting the future, and guiding their people in religious ceremonies. Early priests and temple keepers. In settled agricultural societies, organized priesthoods began to emerge. These religious figures managed temples, led communal rituals, and maintained sacred sites. Ancestor worship. Many early religions focused on honoring ancestors, believing that the spirits of the dead could influence the lives of the living. Offerings were made to ancestors for protection, guidance, and blessings. Sacred sites and early places of worship. Archaeological evidence suggests that early humans built sacred sites and monuments dedicated to religious practices. Some of these sites remain a mystery, but they provide clues about the rituals and beliefs of ancient people. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. One of the world's oldest known religious structures, Göbekli Tepe, built over 11,000 years ago, features massive stone pillars carved with animal figures. This site suggests that organized religious worship existed before the development of farming. Stone circles and megalithic structures. In various parts of the world, early humans erected stone circles, burial mounds, and megalithic structures believed to be linked to religious or astronomical observations. Sacred caves. Many ancient cave paintings suggest that caves were seen as holy places where rituals were performed, possibly to honor spirits or seek guidance from the supernatural. These sites indicate that religion was not just a personal belief, but a communal activity that involved large gatherings and structured ceremonies. The connection between religion and agriculture. With the rise of farming, religious beliefs became closely tied to agriculture, fertility, and seasonal cycles. Many early deities and rituals focused on ensuring good harvests, plentiful livestock, and favorable weather conditions. Earth and fertility goddesses. Many ancient cultures worshipped goddesses associated with fertility, the earth, and motherhood, as they believed these deities controlled the growth of crops and the health of their people. Harvest festivals and rituals. Early farmers developed seasonal religious ceremonies to thank the gods for a successful harvest or pray for rain and good weather. Animal sacrifices and offerings. Some societies practiced ritual sacrifices, offering animals, food, or valuable objects to the gods to gain divine favor and protection. This connection between religion and agriculture would later lead to the development of formalized temples and priesthoods, where religious leaders played an essential role in overseeing farming-related ceremonies. Religious symbols, art, and mythology. As religious beliefs evolved, early humans began creating religious symbols and artwork to express their faith. Carvings and figurines. Many Neolithic sites contain statues and carvings of gods, spirits, or sacred animals, possibly used in worship. Symbolic jewelry and amulets. People wore amulets or charms believed to bring good luck, protection, or blessings from the gods. Oral mythology. Before the invention of writing, religious myths and legends were passed down through oral traditions. These stories explained the creation of the world, the origins of humanity, and the battles between gods and spirits. The social and political influence of religion. Religion not only shaped people's spiritual lives, but also had a major impact on the structure of early societies. Laws and moral codes. Religious beliefs often influence the rules and customs that govern daily life, such as laws against stealing, murder, or disrespecting the gods. The power of religious leaders. In many early societies, priests and spiritual leaders held great authority, sometimes even ruling as divine kings or chiefs. Religious festivals and gatherings, large religious ceremonies helped bring people together, strengthening cultural identity and community bonds. The lasting impact of early religious development. The religious ideas and spiritual traditions that emerged 10,000 years ago laid the foundation for the complex belief systems that would later develop into organized religions. Many of the themes, symbols, and rituals from this time period can still be seen in modern faiths today. As humans transitioned from a nomadic lifestyle to permanent settlements, they faced new challenges. One of the biggest challenges was storing and transporting food and water efficiently. Before the invention of pottery, people used animal skins, woven baskets, and hollowed-out wood for storage, but these materials had limitations. They were not always durable, and they could not hold liquids for long periods. The invention of pottery was a game-changing development that transformed human life. It allowed people to store food more effectively, cook meals in new ways, and even engage in trade. This seemingly simple innovation became one of the most significant technological advancements in human history, laying the foundation for later civilizations. The origins of pottery, how and why it began. Pottery making likely began accidentally when early humans discovered that clay, when heated, hardened into a durable material. The earliest pottery was hand-shaped from natural clay and then baked in open fires. Over time, humans developed more advanced techniques, improving both the quality and durability of pottery. Several factors contributed to the invention of pottery. Surplus food storage. As agriculture developed, people grew more food than they could immediately eat. Pottery provided an effective way to store grains, dried meat, and other food items. Safe water storage. Before pottery, people had limited ways to store and transport water. Clay pots allowed them to carry water over long distances and keep it fresh for extended periods. Cooking innovations. With pottery, humans could boil food and liquids for the first time, leading to new cooking techniques and diets. Increased trade. Pottery was not only functional, but also valuable. Some early communities specialized in making high-quality pots and traded them with neighboring groups for food, tools, or other goods. Early pottery-making techniques. The first pottery was hand-shaped without a wheel, using simple techniques such as coiling, rolling clay into long, snake-like shapes and layering them to form a pot. Pinching, using fingers to shape and mold small pots from lumps of clay. Slab construction, flattening clay into slabs and joining them together to create larger containers. After shaping the clay, early potters fired their creations in open flames or primitive kilns. Over time, people discovered that higher temperatures made pottery stronger and more durable. The different uses of pottery in early societies. Pottery quickly became an essential part of daily life, used for a variety of purposes. Food storage. Large clay jars kept grains, beans, dried fruits, and other food safe from pests and moisture. Water storage. Pottery allowed for cleaner and safer water storage, helping people survive in dry climates. Cooking and food preparation. Pots and bowls were used for boiling soups, stews, and brewing early forms of beverages. Religious and ceremonial use. Some pottery pieces were decorated with symbols, carvings, and paintings, possibly used in rituals or religious ceremonies. Burial practices. In some cultures, people were buried in large pottery jars, believing it would protect the dead in the afterlife. Decorative pottery. The beginning of art and culture. As humans became more skilled at pottery making, they began decorating their creations with intricate designs. These decorations were not just for aesthetics. They represented cultural beliefs, social status, or spiritual symbols. Engraved patterns. Early potters used sticks, bones, or shells to carve patterns into wet clay. Painted pottery. Some of the first painted pottery featured geometric shapes, animals, and human figures. Stamped and imprinted designs. Some cultures pressed woven fabric or plant leaves onto clay surfaces to create unique textures. These designs offer valuable insights into the culture, beliefs, and daily life of ancient societies. Pottery and the development of civilization. The invention of pottery played a critical role in the formation of larger, more complex societies. It allowed people to store and transport food more efficiently, leading to greater food security. Improve cooking methods, resulting in better nutrition and more diverse diets. Develop early economies, as pottery became one of the first mass-produced goods for trade. Express creativity and cultural identity through artistic decorations and unique styles. Over time, pottery-making techniques spread across continents, evolving into more sophisticated methods with the invention of the potter's wheel and high-temperature kilns. This simple yet revolutionary invention marked a major turning point in human history, influencing the way people lived, ate, and interacted with one another.